She didn't leave all at once. The way we began. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to tell a story like this. You know the ones. Long Reddit posts where someone pours their heart out about a breakup or a love they can't let go of. I used to scroll past them thinking, man, just move on. But it's different when it happens to you. When love hits you hard enough, it changes everything. How you see yourself, how you see people, how you measure time. Started 2 years ago in late autumn. The air was crisp, and the city had that quiet hum that only happens right before winter. I was 27, living in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. My life wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. I worked as a freelance designer, good money some months, barely enough others. Most days were quiet, too quiet. Then came her, Maya. We met at a friend's small get-together on a rainy Friday night. There were maybe 10 of us crammed into a studio apartment, with music low enough that you could hear the rain against the windows. I didn't even plan to go, but my friend Ben had insisted. You've been cooped up for weeks, he said. You need human contact. I think those were his exact words. She was standing near the kitchen counter, talking to someone about books. I caught her laugh before I even saw her face. Soft, low, and real. When I turned, she was there. Dark brown hair falling over one shoulder, simple black sweater, jeans. No makeup except maybe a hint of mascara. She looked normal, but something about her stood out, like she wasn't trying to impress anyone. I don't remember how we started talking. Maybe she asked what I did. Maybe I made some joke about the cheap wine. But suddenly we were in our own corner of the room, talking like old friends. The conversation just flowed. No awkward pauses, no small talk. We talked about everything: work, family, what scares us, what keeps us up at night. At one point she said, I like when people actually listen. Most people just wait for their turn to talk. I smiled. Guess that makes 2 of us. When I left that night, I had her number saved in my phone under Maya, Book Girl. That's what I called her for the first few days. Book Girl, until we started texting nonstop. Within a week, we had our first coffee date. Within 2, I couldn't go a single day without talking to her. Those early days were electric. Everything felt easy, no games, no guessing. She'd send me random photos. Her cat curled up on a laptop, a half-finished painting on her wall, a sunset she caught during a walk. And I'd send her bits of my work, sketches, song recommendations. She made everything feel alive. We'd meet at this little cafe downtown, the kind that always smelled like roasted beans and wet pavement. Sometimes we'd sit for hours, not even talking, just existing in the same space. I remember once, it started raining hard, and she looked out the window and said, This is my favorite kind of day. Rainy and cold? I asked. She smiled, that small, shy smile I grew addicted to. It's like the world is pausing for a second. It's peaceful. That stuck with me. Even now, every time it rains, I think of her saying that. After a month, we were officially together. I didn't even need to ask. It just happened naturally, like we'd fallen into the same rhythm. We spent weekends at each other's apartments, made dinner together, binged shows, talked late into the night about what we wanted in life. She told me she'd always wanted to open her own art studio. I told her I'd like to design something that actually mattered someday, not just logos for tech startups. I remember one night in December we went out walking in the city lights. Everything was decorated for Christmas. She stopped to look at a window display. Some mannequins wearing winter coats, fake snow all around. She looked at her reflection and said softly, I want to remember this moment. Why this one? I asked. Because, she said, I feel happy, and I know I won't always feel this way. I didn't know what to say. She had this way of being present and distant at the same time, like she was always half somewhere else in her head. But I loved that about her. I loved that she thought deeply about things most people ignored. Over time, we built our own small world. Inside jokes, shared playlists, Sunday pancakes. She'd doodle little drawings and stick them on my fridge. One of us as cats, one of us in spacesuits, one of us standing under a single umbrella. I still have a few of those drawings somewhere. I can't throw them away. Then came February. The first time we fought. It wasn't big. Just something stupid. I'd canceled plans because of a last-minute project deadline, and she got quiet over text. When I called, she said, "It's fine." But I could tell it wasn't. "Are you mad?" I asked. "No," she said. "I just feel like I'm always the one waiting." That hit harder than it should have. She wasn't wrong. I was bad at balance. Always chasing deadlines. Always promising I'd make it up later. I apologized, and she said it was okay. But something shifted after that. It was small, barely noticeable. Like a single thread had come loose, and I didn't think to tie it back. We moved past it, or at least I thought we did. But sometimes, I'd catch her zoning out when we were together. Or she'd scroll her phone when I was talking. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd say, "No, I'm just tired." It's strange how love can fade not because of one big event, but 1,000 small moments you don't even see stacking up. Still, there were good days. Plenty of them. Days where we laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Days where we just lay on the couch, her head on my chest, watching old movies. But I could sense a slow undercurrent changing. She started going out more. Art shows, gallery nights, just drinks with friends. I told myself she deserved her own space, that it was healthy. But deep down I was scared. Scared that I was watching something beautiful start to slip away, and I didn't know how to stop it. One night, I asked her, "Are you happy with me?" She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "I love you," she said, "but sometimes I feel like I'm losing parts of myself." I didn't know how to respond. How do you argue with that? We didn't talk about it again. But that sentence has echoed in my head ever since. Looking back, maybe that was the first real sign. The first crack that eventually split everything open. By spring, we were still together, but something between us had gone quiet. We still said, "I love you," still texted goodnight, still went on dates. But there was a difference, small pauses, fewer jokes, less warmth. Like we were both pretending we hadn't noticed the distance growing inch by inch. The last memory I have of us before everything really changed was one night in April. We'd gone for a drive along the river. The sky was this pale orange fading into blue, and she was humming softly to some song on the radio. When we stopped at a lookout, she turned to me and said, "Do you ever feel like you're watching your own life from the outside?" I laughed a little. "All the time." She smiled, but her eyes looked sad. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Me too." I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the end. The distance between us. After that night by the river, things didn't fall apart right away. They just changed shape. Love was still there, but it felt thinner, like a thread stretched too tight. I'd wake up to her beside me, same as always, but something in her breathing, in the way she'd roll away before the alarm, told me that her mind was somewhere else. We were still doing the usual things, dinners, movies, lazy Sundays, but it all felt quieter. Even laughter started to sound different. Forced, maybe, like we were both trying to prove that everything was fine. I tried to ignore it at first, told myself that relationships go through phases. People get busy. People get tired. Maybe this was just one of those times when routine dulls the edges of love. But a small voice in my head kept whispering, "She's slipping away from you." I started to notice small things. She'd leave her phone face down more often. She didn't text me good morning anymore. I'd always be the one starting the conversation. When we were together, she'd zone out mid-sentence, her eyes drifting to some invisible point behind me. One night, I asked, "You okay? You've been quiet lately." She smiled a little too quickly. "Just work. Deadlines." I nodded, pretending to believe her, but I could feel the space between us widening, like a slow tide pulling her away inch by inch. Then, one Friday, she canceled our dinner plans. "Something came up," she said. "A gallery friend invited me to a showing. Can I come?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated. "It's kind of a work thing, probably boring for you." That was the first time she didn't want me around. That night, I sat on the couch, staring at her half-empty coffee mug still sitting by the sink. It sounds stupid, but that mug, white with a chipped edge, hit me harder than it should have. Because it was proof that she'd been here, that part of her still existed in my world, even if she was starting to drift from it. When she got home, it was past midnight. She smelled like paint and perfume and rain. "Hey," I said. "How was it?" "Good," she answered, taking off her coat. "I'm exhausted." She kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, and went straight to bed. I sat there for a while, watching her disappear down the hallway. It felt like watching a door slowly close. Not slammed shut, just closing on its own, inch by inch, until all you can see is a sliver of light. Over the next few weeks, I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, doing more. Surprise coffee deliveries at her office. Late-night texts telling her I loved her. Planning small getaways. But the more I reached out, the further she seemed to pull away. One night, she said, "You don't have to keep trying so hard." "What do you mean?" I asked. She sighed. I need to breathe sometimes. It feels like you're watching me all the time, waiting for something. I'm just trying to be there for you." "I know," she said softly. "But it's starting to feel heavy." That word, heavy, stuck with me. I never wanted to be a weight in her life. After that, I started doing the opposite, giving her space. I stopped asking questions, stopped texting first. I waited to see if she'd notice the silence. For a while, she didn't. Then one day she texted, "You've been quiet lately." I wanted to say, "Now you notice?" But instead I wrote, "Just giving you space." She replied with a heart emoji. Nothing else. That was when I realized how far we'd fallen. When a heart emoji felt like a miracle. By summer, we were still technically together, but it didn't feel like it. We'd go days without seeing each other. She'd say she was working late or helping friends. I believed her, or maybe I just wanted to. Then one afternoon, I decided to surprise her at her studio. I brought coffee and her favorite pastries. It wasn't planned. I just missed her. When I got there, I could hear laughter inside, hers and someone else's. A man's voice. I froze for a second. It wasn't jealousy that hit me first. It was fear. Fear of what that laughter might mean. I knocked lightly, pretending I hadn't heard. She opened the door, smiling, but it faded fast when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "Hey, you didn't tell me you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you." She stepped aside. "This is Daniel. He's helping me with the new project." Daniel was tall, calm-looking, with paint on his hands and a smile that seemed too comfortable. We shook hands. I stayed maybe 5 minutes, just long enough to pretend I wasn't shaken. She walked me out and said, "You didn't have to come all this way." "I know," I said. "Just wanted to see you." On the drive home, I told myself I was overreacting. She deserved to have friends, coworkers, collaborators. But deep down, I already knew. Something had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. For weeks after that, I tried to act normal. But it's hard to pretend when every small moment feels like a goodbye. The last time we spent the night together, she fell asleep before me. I watched her breathing, the rise and fall of her chest. I wanted to reach out and hold her, but something stopped me. Not fear, but the sense that I no longer had the right. Like she was already gone, and I was clinging to her shadow. In the morning, she woke up early, dressed quietly, and said she had to go. She kissed me on the forehead. Not lips, not cheek. Forehead, the kind of kiss you give when you care, but you're done pretending it's love. When the door closed behind her, the silence in that room was deafening. That's when I finally admitted it to myself. She was leaving. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. After that morning, everything between us became a pattern of silence. Not the loud kind. Not the yelling or slamming doors you see in movies. This was quiet, polite, almost gentle. The kind of silence that seeps into everything and makes even laughter sound wrong. Days passed. Sometimes she texted, sometimes she didn't. I stopped counting. I told myself I'd wait, give her time, give her peace. But waiting turned into a kind of slow torture. Every unread message, every busy tonight, chipped away at something inside me. One night, I finally asked her to meet. "Just dinner," I said. "No pressure." She agreed. We met at our usual place, a small restaurant tucked between two bookstores downtown. The same place we'd gone to on our first real date. I got there early. I ordered her favorite drink, a gin and tonic with extra lime, and waited. The whole time, I kept watching the door, hoping for that familiar smile, the spark in her eyes. When she finally walked in, I saw her, but it wasn't her. It was someone who looked like her, same hair, same walk, but there was distance in the way she looked at me, like she was already halfway gone. She sat down, smiled politely, and said, "Hey, hey," I replied. "You look different." She laughed lightly. Different good or bad? Different distant. That made her pause. She looked down, fiddled with her napkin. "I don't know what to say to that." "Then just be honest," I said quietly. "Whatever it is, I can take it." She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "I care about you. I always will. But lately I feel like we're trying to keep something alive that's already fading." It felt like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. "So that's it?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I just don't want to hurt you by pretending." The rest of dinner was quiet. We made small talk, both pretending we could still be normal. She told me about her art show coming up next week. I told her about a new client I didn't care about. It was surreal, sitting across from someone you love and realizing that love isn't enough to bring them back. When we said goodbye, she hugged me, tight, long enough for me to think maybe she'd change her mind. But then she whispered, "Take care of yourself, okay?" That was the moment I knew. She was saying goodbye, just without the word. After that night, she stopped reaching out. I still texted sometimes. Nothing heavy. Just, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Good luck today." Sometimes she replied. Sometimes she didn't. Eventually, she stopped completely. Weeks passed. I'd wake up and check my phone before even getting out of bed. Nothing. Days blurred into each other. I started staying late at work. Anything to avoid being alone in that apartment filled with her memories. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. Her sweater still hanging on the chair. I couldn't bring myself to move them. One Saturday morning, I finally decided to clean. Not to erase her, but to breathe again. I found a small sketchbook under the couch, hers. Inside were quick sketches. A river, a cup of coffee, the outline of a man's face that looked a lot like mine. On the last page, she'd written, "Love is not always lost in a storm. Sometimes it just fades with the tide." I stared at that line for a long time. It was her way of explaining everything without ever saying it. Summer turned into fall. The city got colder again. I saw her once, by accident, crossing the street near the art district. She was laughing with someone, probably that guy from her studio. For a moment, I almost called out her name, but I didn't. I just stood there, watching as she disappeared into the crowd. That night, I walked home alone. The sky was gray, drizzling the way she used to love. I stopped under a streetlight, closed my eyes, and for a moment, I could almost hear her voice, soft, distant, saying, "This is my favorite kind of day." And for the first time in months, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because it finally made sense. She hadn't betrayed me. She hadn't stopped caring. She had just changed. And maybe deep down I had too. I started going on long walks again. Started drawing. Started sleeping through the night without waiting for her messages. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in small, quiet ways. Like learning to enjoy my coffee without thinking about hers. Or watching the rain without feeling empty. Sometimes, when people ask me what happened, I just say, we grew apart. But the truth is, love didn't end. It just softened into memory. Something I can hold without pain. Something that still feels real even if it's gone. And that's when I realized, she didn't leave all at once. She left slowly, the way the light fades at sunset. Quietly, beautifully, until you only notice it's dark when it's already night. The first real morning without her felt strange. The apartment looked the same. Same messy desk, same half-drawn sketches, same quiet hum of the refrigerator. But everything was heavier. It's strange how silence can sound different depending on who's missing. I made coffee the way I always did, 2 cups out of habit. Then I realized there was no one to drink the second one. I poured it out slowly, watching the steam disappear into the sink. That became a pattern. For weeks, I kept making 2 cups without thinking. Like my hands remembered what my heart refused to accept. Grief doesn't come all at once. It sneaks in through small moments. A song, a smell, a corner of the bed that's still cold. I found her hair tie once under a pillow, and it broke me. Not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. Proof that she had been real. At first, I tried to distract myself. I buried myself in work. Took on every freelance job I could find. Logos, websites, social media banners, anything to fill the hours. I worked until my eyes hurt, until my head buzzed with exhaustion. But the moment I stopped, she was there again. In every quiet pause. Sometimes I'd scroll through her old texts just to remember what it felt like to be wanted. I knew it was pointless, maybe even pathetic, but that's how heartbreak works. It makes you addicted to ghosts. One night, Ben, the same friend who introduced us, called me out. "You've got to stop hiding, man," he said. "She's gone. You can't keep living in that apartment like she's coming back." "I know," I said, but I didn't. I wasn't ready to move on. Not yet. Eventually, I started forcing myself outside. Small steps, grocery store runs, walks in the park. I'd see couples holding hands and feel that familiar sting, but it got weaker each time. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with what's missing. One evening, I sat by the river, the same place where she'd once said she felt like she was watching her life from the outside. The water moved slowly, reflecting the city lights. I wondered if she ever came back here, if she thought about me when it rained, if she remembered how it felt to laugh with me for hours. That night, I wrote for the first time in months. Just words in a notebook, no structure, no purpose. I wrote about the things I missed, the things I hated, the things I wished I'd said. It wasn't for her. It was for me, to let it out. Some loves don't die, I wrote. They just change shape and live quietly inside you. A few weeks later, I ran into Daniel, the guy from her studio, at a cafe. He recognized me instantly. We talked for a bit, awkward but polite. I asked how Maya was doing. He said she was fine, busy with exhibitions, working on new projects. I nodded, pretending that hearing her name didn't still hurt. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You know, she still talks about you sometimes." I froze. "What does she say?" "Just that you were good to her," he said. "That she wishes things had been different." I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Sadness? Both probably. Because even after everything, a part of me still wanted her to think of me kindly. That night, I dreamed about her for the first time in months. We were walking in the rain, hand in hand, not saying anything. When I woke up, I didn't cry. I just sat there quietly, realizing that maybe my heart was finally starting to let her go. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Life didn't get easier, it just got normal again. I started seeing friends more. Started saying yes to things I used to avoid. A road trip, concert, even a date, though it didn't go anywhere. Still, it felt like a step forward. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about her. Not the way I used to, not with that sharp ache, but with a kind of calm gratitude. Because as painful as it was, she taught me what it means to love deeply, and what it means to lose without bitterness. I still keep one of her sketches on my wall. The one of 2 people standing under an umbrella. It reminds me of who we were. Not perfect, not forever, but real. And maybe that's enough. The next morning felt like someone had turned the world's volume all the way down. No sound, no movement, just that heavy kind of quiet that presses against your chest. She was still there, lying on her side of the bed, back turned to me. I stared at the ceiling for a while, thinking about the night before, about how calm it all was, and how wrong that calmness felt. Eventually, I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone just to fill the silence. When she finally came out, she looked like she hadn't slept either. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red, and she didn't meet my gaze. "Morning," I said. She just nodded, poured herself coffee, and stood by the counter. After a moment, I asked, "Are you going to work today?" She hesitated. "Yeah, I think so." We both knew she wasn't. She always paused like that when she was lying. I didn't push. I didn't have the energy. I just sat there, listening to the sound of her stirring sugar into her coffee, wondering when love had turned into this. Two people avoiding each other in a kitchen that used to feel like home. Before she left, she stopped by the door. "Can we talk later?" she asked softly. "Sure," I said, "if there's anything left to talk about." She didn't reply, just grabbed her keys and left. When the door shut, the apartment felt different. Emptier, but somehow cleaner. I sat there for a while, staring at the spot where she'd been standing. The truth is, I already knew what was coming. I think she did too. We were both waiting for the other to say it first, that it was over. That afternoon, I texted my friend Nate and asked if he wanted to grab a beer. He knew something was wrong the moment he saw me. "You look like hell, man," he said. I laughed. "Thanks. Appreciate it." We talked for hours. I told him everything, the messages, the dinner, the way she looked at me like I was a stranger in my own home. He didn't interrupt much, just listened. When I was done, he said quietly, "So what now?" I didn't have an answer. "I don't know. I just don't want to hate her. But I don't think I can stay either." He nodded. "Then maybe it's time you stop trying to fix something that doesn't exist anymore." That sentence stayed with me. When I got home that night, she was there, sitting on the couch, suitcase beside her. Her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. "I think you're right," she said softly. "We've been pretending for too long." I didn't move. I didn't yell. I just stood there, looking at her, realizing that this was it. She kept talking about how sorry she was, how she didn't mean for it to happen, how she still cared about me but didn't love me the same way. I let her talk. Every word was both a wound and a relief. Finally, she said, "I'll stay with a friend for a while, just until I figure things out." I nodded. "Okay." She looked surprised that I didn't argue. Maybe she expected me to beg or to tell her to stay. But I had nothing left to give. When she picked up her suitcase, I noticed her hands shaking. At the door, she turned back once. Just a small, broken glance, and then she was gone. The sound of the door clicking shut felt final. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty hallway. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the same table where she'd stood that morning. Her mug was still there, half full, cold. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The first time we met, the first time she laughed at one of my dumb jokes, the trips, the holidays, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder while watching movies. And then, like a cruel trick, my mind shifted to the last few months. The silence, the distance, the moment I saw her with him. It felt like watching a movie backward, from love to emptiness. Around 3 a.m., I finally got up and walked around the apartment. Her scent was still everywhere, her perfume, her shampoo, her jacket on the chair. I opened the window to let the cold night air in. It helped, just a little. I sat on the floor by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights. I remember thinking how strange it was, how life keeps going even when yours falls apart. People were out there laughing, driving, living. And I was sitting here, in a quiet apartment, feeling like I'd lost everything. But then another thought came, maybe this wasn't losing. Maybe it was freeing. Because for the first time in months, there were no lies, no guessing, no pretending. Just silence. Honest, painful silence. And I decided that tomorrow I'd start over. Somehow. Even if I didn't know where to begin. The first morning without her felt strange in a way I can't fully describe. The apartment didn't look any different, but it sounded different. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful. More like the silence after something loud breaks. I woke up earlier than usual, probably out of habit, and for a second, I almost turned to her side of the bed to say good morning. But it was empty. Just a flat pillow and the faint scent of her shampoo. That hit harder than I expected. I got up, made coffee, and stood by the window. The city outside looked normal, almost indifferent. People rushing to work, cars honking, a delivery guy balancing a tray of drinks. Life doesn't stop just because yours does. That realization hurt, but it also grounded me. I wasn't the first person to be left. I wouldn't be the last. I spent the first few hours cleaning. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. I washed the dishes, folded laundry, even scrubbed the bathroom sink. I threw away an old candle she loved and almost fished it back out of the trash a minute later. It smelled like her. I didn't. I let it go. Around noon, I went for a walk. The air was cold and sharp. I passed by a couple holding hands and instantly looked away. Funny how you start noticing couples everywhere after a breakup. It's like the universe keeps reminding you of what you've lost. I stopped at a small diner we used to go to. The waitress recognized me and smiled. "Just you today?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just me." That answer lingered longer than it should have. When I got home, I opened my phone and scrolled through old photos. I told myself I was going to delete them, but I didn't. Not yet. Each one felt like a piece of a different life. I remembered how her laugh sounded when I'd take candid pictures of her. I remembered the way she'd steal my hoodies even when she had her own. Those little things stick to you like glue. That night, I ordered takeout from the same place we used to. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to see if the food still tasted the same without her sitting across from me. Didn't. Everything was duller. A few days passed. My routine became mechanical: wake up, work, gym, sleep. I tried to stay busy, but some moments still caught me off guard. Like when I'd unlock my phone and instinctively open her chat, only to realize she wasn't there anymore. Or when I'd hear a song that used to play while we cooked together. Those small stabs hurt more than the big ones. One night, I got a message from her. Just one line: "I hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a while, unsure what to say. I typed, deleted, retyped. Eventually, I settled on, "I'm trying. You?" She replied, "Same." That was it. No apologies, no explanations. Just two people acknowledging the quiet between them. After that, I muted her chat. Not out of anger, but self-preservation. I knew that if she texted again, I'd fall right back into the cycle of what-ifs. And I couldn't afford that anymore. A week later, my friend Nate convinced me to go out. "You need air," he said. We went to a bar, grabbed drinks, watched a basketball game. I laughed for the first time in what felt like months. It wasn't a big, loud laugh, just a small, real one. And it reminded me that maybe, one day, I'd feel normal again. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark for a while. The apartment didn't feel so suffocating anymore. Still empty, but not unbearable. I started thinking about how much of my identity had been tied to her. How easily I'd forgotten who I was before we met. That thought scared me, but it also gave me something to work toward. The next morning, I made a list. It wasn't a grand plan or a dramatic new me thing. Just small steps. Go running again. Learn to cook something new. Call mom more often. Read that book Collecting Dust on the Shelf. I didn't know if any of it would help, but it gave me direction. Over the next few weeks, I actually did it. I started running at dawn, when the streets were empty. It became my therapy. There was something cleansing about breathing in the cold air, hearing nothing but my own footsteps. I started eating better, sleeping better, even smiling at strangers again. It didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me I was still alive. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering what she was doing, whether she missed me, whether she regretted it. I'd imagine her in another apartment, maybe laughing with someone else. And weirdly, that thought didn't crush me like it used to. Maybe because I'd accepted that her story had diverged from mine. One Friday evening, I went out to that same park we used to visit in summer. The one with the food trucks and the live music. I sat on a bench with a coffee, watching people pass by. There was a couple nearby, laughing, sharing fries. For the first time, instead of feeling jealous or bitter, I just smiled. Love looked good on people. Even if it had broken me, I couldn't hate it. As the sun started to set, I realized something simple but true. Endings don't always have to mean failure. Sometimes they're just the point where growth begins. I walked home slowly, not in a rush for once. The apartment lights welcomed me back quietly. I made dinner, watched a movie, and when I went to bed, I didn't reach for the empty side anymore. That night, for the first time since she left, I slept peacefully. It's strange how healing creeps up on you quietly. One day, you're counting hours since they left. The next, you realize you went the whole day without thinking of them once. That's how it started for me. Small, invisible shifts. I didn't even notice them at first. I just started existing again without the constant weight in my chest. It had been about 2 months since she left. The apartment was fully mine now. I rearranged the furniture, got rid of the curtains she liked, changed the bedsheets, even painted one of the walls a darker color. It felt symbolic even if I didn't plan it that way. Every small change erased a ghost. Work started to feel normal again. I was present, focused. My boss even joked, "You look less dead inside lately." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. I was starting to feel human again. I also started talking more with people I'd drifted away from. My sister called one night and said, "You sound like yourself again." That hit me harder than I expected. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd lost trying to hold on to someone who'd already let go. Nate kept dragging me out on weekends, bars, game nights, random house parties. I didn't always enjoy them, but I went, mostly to prove I could. Then, one Friday night at one of those small rooftop get-togethers, I met someone. Her name was Claire. She wasn't loud or overly confident. She just had this calm energy about her. We ended up sitting on the edge of the rooftop, talking for hours about nothing and everything. Work, travel, childhood stories, how weirdly comforting rain sounds can be. At one point, she asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" I hesitated for a second before shaking my head. "Not really. Long story." She smiled gently. "Those are usually the best kind." We talked until people started leaving. When she got up to go, she handed me her number without hesitation. "Text me if you ever want to grab coffee or talk about more long stories." When she left, I sat there alone for a while, staring at the city lights. I didn't feel the rush of new attraction. Not yet. What I felt was possibility, something I hadn't felt in a long time. The next morning, I texted her. Just something simple, "Coffee sounds good." She replied almost immediately, "Tomorrow." We met at a quiet cafe downtown. I was nervous at first, like I was doing something wrong. But as soon as she started talking, the tension eased. She asked questions that actually mattered, not small talk, but the kind of questions that make you think. She told me about her job at a design studio, how she paints in her spare time, how she once got lost in Italy for 3 hours because she refused to ask for directions. I told her bits of my story, carefully, honestly. I didn't hide that I'd just come out of a long relationship. She didn't flinch. She just listened and said, "Sounds like you learned a lot." That line stuck with me, because I just hadn't realized it until someone else pointed it out. After coffee, we walked for a while. There was no pressure, no expectation. It was just easy. When we said goodbye, she hugged me warm, brief, real. And for the first time in months, that touch didn't ache. Over the next few weeks, we kept meeting, more coffee, long walks, lazy evenings watching movies. It wasn't fast, it wasn't intense, and maybe that's what I liked most. Felt grounded, safe. But there were moments when old fears crept in. Sometimes I'd catch myself comparing. The way she laughed, the way she looked at me. I hated that part of my brain, but I knew healing isn't linear. You don't just erase the past. You learn to live beside it. One night, while we were cooking dinner together, she looked up at me and said, "You overthink a lot, don't you?" I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" She nodded, smiling. "Yeah, but it's kind of endearing. Just don't let your past make you scared of good things." That hit deeper than she probably realized. Because that's exactly what I'd been doing. Waiting for things to go wrong. Expecting silence after warmth. That night, when she left, I sat on the couch replaying her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe the hardest part of moving on isn't letting go of the person. It's learning to stop expecting pain. The next day, I found myself doing something small but important. I deleted the last few pictures of my ex that I'd kept, just in case. There wasn't any anger left, just acceptance. Weeks turned into months. Claire and I weren't official, and I didn't rush it. I wanted this one to grow naturally. She made me laugh again, made me curious again. And maybe that's all I needed. Someone to remind me that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Still, sometimes I'd wake up at night and think about how different my life had become. Just half a year ago, I was sitting alone in the dark, unable to imagine feeling anything but loss. Now here I was, sitting at a cafe across from someone who made me forget, even for a few hours, that I'd ever been broken. Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a big revelation. It just happens quietly, like sunlight creeping through the blinds after a long night. And as I walked home after one of our evenings together, I realized something simple. I was no longer trying to get back to who I was before her. I was becoming someone new, someone better. The weeks that followed felt like standing in the ruins of something I'd spent years building. Every room in the apartment echoed differently now. Her absence had a shape, a weight. I'd wake up reaching for her side of the bed, still expecting warmth, still expecting her sleepy hum. Instead, there was only cold air and silence that rang too loud. I kept telling myself I was doing fine, that I could handle it. I worked, I cleaned, I cooked, all the small mechanics of normal life. But it was like performing an imitation of living. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't scream. It just hums in the background, soft and endless. After 2 weeks, I texted her again. Just a single line, "Hope you're okay." She read it but didn't reply. That little scene felt like a door closing again. I deleted the chat, then restored it 2 minutes later. At work, I started staying late. I volunteered for things nobody wanted to do. My boss praised my renewed focus, not realizing I was just trying to avoid going home. I'd sit in my car afterward, engine off, staring at the city lights bleeding through the windshield. It was like watching life happen to other people. One Friday night, I met up with my friend Jordan. He's one of those brutally honest types. After a few beers, he said, "You're still waiting for her, man. You've built your whole life around waiting." I wanted to argue, but he was right. My entire routine still revolved around the ghost of her. I tried dating again. Downloaded an app, swiped mindlessly. Everyone looked perfect, filtered, and far away. I went on one date, a kind girl named Melissa. She laughed easily, asked questions, shared stories. But the whole time, my brain compared her to Emily. Her tone, her eyes, the way she stirred her drink. I hated myself for it. When she texted me later that night, I never replied. Some nights, I scrolled through old photos. I noticed things I'd missed before. The moments where her smile didn't reach her eyes. The distance I hadn't seen because I was too in love with the idea of us. It hit me. She'd been gone long before she left. I started writing again. Nothing structured, just thoughts, fragments. Love doesn't always end with a fight, I wrote one night. Sometimes it ends with exhaustion. I didn't post it anywhere, just saved it in my notes. By early spring, I decided to move. The apartment felt like a museum of what used to be. Every corner had a memory attached to it, and I couldn't breathe without bumping into one. I found a small studio across town. New start, smaller rent, fewer ghosts. The day I packed, I found one of her sweaters under the bed. Light gray, soft, still holding her scent. I sat there holding it like an idiot, not knowing whether to keep it or throw it away. In the end, I folded it gently and put it in a donation box. Maybe someone else could make new memories in it. The first night in my new place, I couldn't sleep. The air smelled like paint and new beginnings. I lay there listening to the city outside. Distant traffic, sirens, life moving on. I thought about her. Not with anger this time, just quiet understanding. We were two people who loved each other the best way we knew how, and it wasn't enough. The next morning, sunlight hit the floor just right. I made coffee, opened the window, and for the first time in months I didn't feel heavy. There was still sadness, yes, but it wasn't drowning me anymore. It was just part of me now, like a scar you stop noticing. Jordan texted, asking if I wanted to grab lunch. I said sure. It felt like a small thing, but saying yes again to the world felt huge. Maybe healing isn't a grand event. Maybe it's 1,000 small, ordinary decisions to keep moving. Later that night, I sat by the window watching people pass by. Couples, friends, strangers. I realized I wasn't jealous anymore, just curious. Love wasn't something I'd lost forever. It was something I'd learned from, painfully but honestly. I picked up my phone and opened a blank note. Part of growing up, I wrote, is realizing that closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you build quietly, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and you don't need answers anymore. I didn't send it to anyone. I just smiled at the screen for a moment, then closed it. Outside, the city lights flickered like a heartbeat. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of it. It's strange how time doesn't heal things so much as it rearranges them. You don't forget. You just stop needing to remember every detail. Months passed, and life slowly grew into something that resembled peace. Not happiness exactly, just quiet stability. I built new routines. Mornings started with coffee and a walk instead of checking my phone. I deleted her number from my contacts, not out of anger, but because I finally didn't need to see it anymore. I even bought a small plant, something green and alive to look after. I named it Charlie. Jordan laughed when I told him, but it helped. There was something reassuring about watching something grow. Work got busier. My manager noticed my focus and offered me a small promotion. I took it without hesitation. I still wasn't thrilled about anything, but I wasn't drifting either. That felt like progress. Then one afternoon, months after I'd stopped expecting it, I got an email from Emily. The subject line was just, "Hey." My stomach tightened. I hovered over it for 5 full minutes before opening it. "Hey, I hope you're doing okay. I saw something today that reminded me of you. A cafe near the river where we used to go. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. You didn't deserve silence. I wasn't ready to face things then. I hope you're doing well." No questions. No invitations. Just that. I read it twice, then closed my laptop and sat in silence. For a while, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to write back, to tell her I missed her, that I still thought about her sometimes. Another part of me knew that wasn't what I really wanted. What I wanted was the version of us that no longer existed. That night, I wrote a reply, but not to send. "I forgive you, not because you asked, but because I can't carry this forever. We loved each other, but we were young in the wrong ways. You ran and I froze. Maybe that was the only way it could have gone." I saved it as a draft and went to bed. The next morning, I deleted the draft and the email. Not in anger, just closure. I realized that forgiveness doesn't always need witnesses. Sometimes it's something you do quietly, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Over the following weeks, I started noticing small joys again. A good song in the car, the smell of rain, strangers laughing in a cafe. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I was just there, living. One evening, I met Melissa again, the girl from the one date months ago. She was at a friend's gathering, standing across the room, smiling in that easy way I remembered. When she saw me, she waved. This time, I didn't freeze. I walked over. We talked for hours. About nothing heavy, music, movies, random life updates. Felt simple. No ghosts between us this time. When the night ended, she said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. "Maybe I am." We exchanged numbers again. Not with expectations, just possibilities. And for once, that felt like enough. Later that night, I went home and sat by the window. The city buzzed softly below. I thought about how strange it was, how endings aren't really endings at all. They're just spaces where new things start to form quietly, almost imperceptibly. I opened my notebook again, the one I'd been writing in since the breakup. The first page was full of confusion and longing. The newest entry was just one line. Sometimes the most beautiful thing love can do is teach you how to let go. I closed the notebook and leaned back, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Contentment. Not the loud kind, but the kind that settles deep in your chest and just stays there. Somewhere out there, Emily was probably moving on too. Maybe she found her peace. I hoped she did. We weren't meant to end in flames. We were meant to fade quietly so that we could both find new light. When I turned off the lamp, the room wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. Tomorrow I'd wake up, make coffee, water Charlie, maybe text Melissa. Ordinary things. Small things. The kind that somehow make a life. It's strange how time doesn't heal things so much as it rearranges them. You don't forget. You just stop needing to remember every detail. Months passed, and life slowly grew into something that resembled peace. Not happiness exactly, just quiet stability. I built new routines. Mornings started with coffee and a walk instead of checking my phone. I deleted her number from my contacts, not out of anger, but because I finally didn't need to see it anymore. I even bought a small plant, something green and alive to look after. I named it Charlie. Jordan laughed when I told him, but it helped. There was something reassuring about watching something grow. Work got busier. My manager noticed my focus and offered me a small promotion. I took it without hesitation. I still wasn't thrilled about anything, but I wasn't drifting either. That felt like progress. Then one afternoon, months after I'd stopped expecting it, I got an email from Emily. The subject line was just, "Hey." My stomach tightened. I hovered over it for 5 full minutes before opening it. "Hey, I hope you're doing okay. I saw something today that reminded me of you. A cafe near the river where we used to go. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. You didn't deserve silence. I wasn't ready to face things then. I hope you're doing well. No questions. No invitations. Just that." I read it twice, then closed my laptop and sat in silence. For a while, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to write back, to tell her I missed her, that I still thought about her sometimes. Another part of me knew that wasn't what I really wanted. What I wanted was the version of us that no longer existed. That night, I wrote a reply, but not to send. "I forgive you, not because you asked, but because I can't carry this forever. We loved each other, but we were young in the wrong ways. You ran and I froze. Maybe that was the only way it could have gone." I saved it as a draft and went to bed. The next morning, I deleted the draft and the email. Not in anger, just closure. I realized that forgiveness doesn't always need witnesses. Sometimes it's something you do quietly, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Over the following weeks, I started noticing small joys again. A good song in the car, the smell of rain, strangers laughing in a cafe. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I was just there, living. One evening, I met Melissa again, the girl from the one date months ago. She was at a friend's gathering, standing across the room, smiling in that easy way I remembered. When she saw me, she waved. This time, I didn't freeze. I walked over. We talked for hours. About nothing heavy, music, movies, random life updates. Felt simple. No ghosts between us this time. When the night ended, she said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. "Maybe I am." We exchanged numbers again. Not with expectations, just possibilities. And for once, that felt like enough. Later that night, I went home and sat by the window. The city buzzed softly below. I thought about how strange it was, how endings aren't really endings at all. They're just spaces where new things start to form quietly, almost imperceptibly. I opened my notebook again, the one I'd been writing in since the breakup. The first page was full of confusion and longing. The newest entry was just one line. "Sometimes the most beautiful thing love can do is teach you how to let go." I closed the notebook and leaned back, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Contentment. Not the loud kind, but the kind that settles deep in your chest and just stays there. Somewhere out there, Emily was probably moving on too. Maybe she found her peace. I hoped she did. We weren't meant to end in flames. We were meant to fade quietly so that we could both find new light. When I turned off the lamp, the room wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. Tomorrow I'd wake up, make coffee, water Charlie, maybe text Melissa. Ordinary things. Small things. The kind that somehow make a life.